Hi everybody. Sometimes this is one of the harder chapters to grasp as we're not really familiar with the lymphatic system in our general knowledge. The heart and cardiovascular and brain and nervous system, that kind of makes sense to us, but a lot of people have never heard of the lymphatic system or what it means. So we'll go through that today and talk about a few of the topics within chapter 14. First of all, the lymphatic system is made up of vessels. It's very similar to the blood vessels, but it does not carry blood. It's a one-way system, so instead of the circulatory system where we're sending blood away and then back to the heart, the lymphatic vessels only work in one direction. So from the capillaries to the heart is the only way that fluid can flow. It does not go the opposite way. They're very low pressure vessels, just like the veins, and they use the same mechanisms as veins to return lymph to the heart. So if you remember talking about veins and how they use the muscles around them to squeeze and push that blood back up, same thing that's happening to the fluid inside the lymphatic vessels. This is a nice graphic that shows how we're going from the capillaries up to the heart. If you can imagine this system being entangled with the blood vessels, that's how we're getting rid of the bad stuff. So if there's waste within your body that you need to get rid of, it can be transferred from the tissues through the capillaries into these lymphatic vessels, and eventually it's going to drain up and out through your heart. There are four main components to the lymphatic system. One, the vessels we already talked about. Two, the fluid inside those vessels. The lymphocytes, which are, as you can tell from the word, cells that are made of lymph. And then number four, the lymphoid tissue and organs. That part is shown here on this graphic. So we have all of the vessels in those green lines. The nodes are the little bumps, or the little kind of spherical things that are gathering up large portions of the tissue that needs to be drained away. The next thing I want you to look at, if you can on your own, is found here. Take a look at this examination. It's just a YouTube clip, and it's kind of interesting. Make sure as you're watching this to follow along, because it shows you exactly where you should be touching along the neck and under the jaw to find the lymph nodes. So definitely take the time to check out that link. The functions of the lymphatic system are to, one, produce, maintain, and distribute those lymphocytes. Remember, the lymphocytes are cells made of lymph that they are attacking bad stuff. Another function is to return fluids and solutes from the peripheral tissues. So that just means it's moving from all those tissues that are out in your fingers and your toes, your organs. It's going from there up to the heart. It also helps with the distribution of hormones, nutrients, and then, of course, as we've talked about, the waste products. Lymphoid cells, or lymphocytes, this part should sound familiar. The T cells and B cells are both lymphocytes. They're both kind of attacking cells. Another one that we mentioned in the last chapter was the natural killer cells. All three of these are part of the blood system that is attacking foreign objects. The types of tissues, or those little spherical nodules we saw on the picture, those are very, very small, and sometimes they are called MALT tissues, or mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. So if you see that acronym, don't be confused. It just means it has to do with the lymph system. And then lastly, the organs of the lymph system are the nodes, the thymus, and spleen. Here we have a picture of a lymph node. So you can see all of the vessels that are moving in and moving out. They're called afferent and efferent, very similarly named as the nervous system. So afferent is coming in, efferent is leaving. And sometimes these nodes get infected or they get stopped up so that the fluid can't escape and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. And in that case, we need to remove them. This link is, I'll tell you right now, it's a little bit graphic, a little bit gross, so if you're a little squeamish, you might want to look away at times, but it's an actual surgery where they're removing an obturator node, which is in your pelvis kind of groin area. So check that out. It's a little bit long. If you fast forward through it, it helps, but it's really cool. So if you're interested in any dissection, check out that link. Here we have the organs shown for you on the body, the tonsils, thymus, and the Peyer's patches, which are inside your intestines, the appendix, which I'm sure you're familiar with, and spleen. Just a heads up that the tonsils are not quite labeled correctly there. That line is a little bit off. A closer look at the spleen shows that it's a very thick organ, very similarly set up as the kidney. This is a real spleen. As you can see, it's kind of big actually compared to some of the other organs in your body. Then we have the thymus, which sits around your trachea, right on top of your heart. And from now on, we're going to just talk about immune system. So there's two types of immune system, or two categories, the innate defense and adaptive defense. So the first one is something you're born with. You're born with your skin as a barrier. You have chemicals and cells that you've developed through your mother's pregnancy to combat bad things. And then as you grow and you become exposed to other pathogens, viruses, bacteria, you're going to adapt to what you come in contact with. And that's part of the adaptive defenses. So it's developing over time, and there's two types, the antibody and cell-mediated immune responses. And we'll jump into that in a couple more slides. But let's start from the top with the innate defense. One of the most obvious is your skin. It's the physical barrier that keeps the stuff on the outside of you on the outside, and the inside on the inside. Phagocytes are little cells that can reach out and kind of gobble up bad things that happen to get in. So if you had a cut through your skin and these organisms were able to get in that way, the first thing that would happen is your body would send out phagocytes to eat up those bad things and dispose of them that way. The other thing that you're born with is the ability to produce inflammation. So whenever there's something that's breached that skin barrier, you will have some kind of inflammation, which is rushing of blood to that area, and especially white blood cells to help get rid of the bad things. The last thing of the innate defense is that your body raises its body temperature. So normally it's around, we say 98.6, but when you have something that is going on, you need to generate more energy, and energy creates heat, so your body becomes above that normal temperature. So when you think about it, if you automatically grab for a Tylenol whenever you have a high body temp, is that necessarily a good thing? It could be, could not. Something to think about. Phagocytosis, or the phagocytes that we talked about in the last slide, this is a cool picture of it. The green things are the bad stuff, or in this case, bacteria. The phagocyte reaches out, pulls them inside, and breaks it down so that the bacteria is no longer harmful for your body. And this is just another way that it to show what it's doing here. Phagocyte reaches out, pulls those pathogens inside, breaks it up, and then releases it because it can no longer do any harm. Okay, so adaptive defenses, there's a few different properties here. They're going to be very specific. So if you encounter a specific type of virus, your body will remember that specific virus, and it won't forget it, which becomes part of the memory. If you encounter that virus again once you've already tackled it, you won't feel as sick because your body just takes it out without you feeling any symptoms. You also develop a tolerance for things that are similar to things that you've already seen. And that might not make sense yet, but hang in there. All right, couple things. Antigen and antibody are words that we throw around a lot when we talk about the immune system. It's very important to know the difference. An antigen is something that's foreign, so it's coming from outside of your body. An antibody is something that your body makes in response to an antigen. So in some ways, they're constantly fighting each other. And here you can see the antigen in the middle. It has all these different binding sites that are differently shaped. And the antibodies can fit onto them and basically shut down what the antigen is doing. So as I just said, the antibody's function is to eliminate the antigens or shut down their function. There's 5 different classes, and they're all labeled with letters. So the antibody is the same thing as saying immunoglobulin. We have immunoglobulin M, G, A, D, and E. Each one of those has a specific property. I would recommend that you check out page 48 and look through what those properties are. Okay, we're winding down here. The types of immunity are active and passive. And just like it sounds, active is something that you have to encounter and go through, and you are actively fighting something off. Passive immunity is when you are exposed to something through your mother as a fetus. She's doing all the work. You're just receiving that immunity. And another way to get passive immunity is to get antibodies from another person, so it would be injected to you. This chart is really helpful. Under the active immunity, we have naturally acquired and artificially acquired. Naturally acquired is when you actually get sick and your body fights it off naturally. The artificial way would be to be exposed to a vaccine, which is a dead virus that your body doesn't have to attack, but it does recognize and memorize so that if it does see it in the future, you already know what to do. On the passive side of things, we have naturally acquired, that is through the mother, as we have said, and then we have artificial, and that is, just to reiterate, when you receive immunoglobulins from somewhere else, from another person. Autoimmune disorders are becoming more common, actually, and when your immune system attacks something it shouldn't, that can be a very devastating disease. That's what's happening with autoimmune disorders. Your immune response sees a normal cell, but it thinks, oh my gosh, this is a bad thing, we've got to get rid of it, we've got to destroy it. And you don't want to always be doing that because it's going to be a lifetime disease. So we have 3 examples: rheumatoid arthritis, insulin-dependent diabetes mellitus, and then also AIDS is one of the most commonly known. Last slide to go over here is the allergy slide. If you have looked through that chart that shows the different immunoglobulins, you should be able to know which one of those is responsible for the antihistamine properties. But sometimes it doesn't work. So if you have an inappropriate or excessive response to something that is normally not a big deal, that's what we call an allergy. When it becomes very serious, that's called anaphylaxis, and that's a whole body response to a stimulus. If you have any questions on chapter 14, let me know. I know it can be kind of a daunting chapter, but once you read through it and start to understand the basics, it's not too bad. So let me know if you have any questions, and happy studying.